Some legends are carved in stone, some are sung in stadiums for 100 years, but some build their greatness quietly in sweat, in discipline, in the shadows behind the roar. Alan Durban was never the headline. He didn't chase applause or raise his arms for the cameras. He built teams, not statues. He gave clubs their backbone and then stepped aside, letting others lift the trophy. You won't find his face on marble. No murals in the stands, no stand named in his honor. But look closer and you'll see his fingerprints on the rise of Derby, the rebirth of Stoke, the quiet resurrection of clubs that others left behind. He didn't shout for attention, he just did the work, and in doing so changed what football means for everyone who cares about the heart behind the banners. This isn't about a man who wanted to be remembered. This is about a builder who made remembering possible. If you believe football should honor the architects, not just the artists, subscribe. Because Alan Durban never asked to be celebrated. He just left a legacy that can't be erased. Alan Durban was born on July 7, 1941, in Bridgend, a quiet town in Glamorgan, South Wales. While other kids chased chaos, he watched angles on the pitch and in people. Durban was brought up in Bridgend, Glamorgan before beginning his professional career. It wasn't long before word spread. A teenager with poise like a veteran, footballing intelligence far beyond his years. Cardiff City, 1959 to 1963. 52 league appearances, 9 goals. Derby County came calling. They didn't see flash, they saw future. He transferred from Cardiff City to Derby County in July 1963 and made his Derby debut on 24th August 1963. Quietly stepping into a world where most shouted to be seen. But Durban never needed to raise his voice. Even as a teenager, he played with a calm that unsettled opponents, not with strength, but with precision. A midfielder in name, a strategist in soul. He was never built to follow, he was born to lead. And Derby would soon learn they hadn't just signed a player, they'd uncovered a mind. At first, Alan Durban was just a clever midfielder joining a modest side, but fate had louder plans. Because in 1967, Brian Clough arrived, and the entire temperature of Derby changed. Suddenly, fire replaced formality. Standards hardened, weakness was driven out. And those who remained became something else, soldiers in Clough's revolution. Durban didn't just survive it, he became its heartbeat. Clough called him his midfield lieutenant. Others called him the brain. And soon, his fingerprints were on every tactical pattern Derby played. He wore the red of Wales with pride, 27 caps between 1966 and 1972, scoring twice for his country. In 1968-69, they roared to the top. Durban helping dictate play, control tempo, cover every blade. And in that season, they earned promotion to the First Division for the first time in 16 years. Alan Durban didn't just help them rise, he helped redefine who they were. A modest arrival had turned into a quiet architect of change. In Brian Clough's revolution, others lit the fire. Durban kept it burning. Quiet, calculated, constant. This was the era of Colin Todd, Roy McFarland, and Alan Hinton. But Clough knew who his field lieutenant was, and Durban delivered every time. Durban made 31 league appearances in Derby's 1971-72 title season and 41 appearances in all competitions that year. That was the year Derby lifted the First Division title, but trophies don't tell his worth. Tactical discipline, game management, midfield glue. He read the game like a prophet, spoke like a coach, moved like a man who already saw the next 3 phases. Teammates said he was always one pass ahead, that if you stood still, he'd already moved to cover you. Not fast, not loud, but essential. The kind of player whose name never left the manager's mouth and never needed to. In Clough's words, he was the sort every team needs. He didn't crave attention, he commanded trust. This wasn't a star, it was a strategist. And when Derby County stunned England, it was Alan Durban who made sure they never lost their shape. By 1973, his legs still ran, but it was his mind the club needed most. Alan Durban became more than a player. He became the bridge between the pitch and the dugout. Peter Taylor and Brian Clough knew it. They didn't need to say it aloud. Durban had already been leading with his voice, his positioning, his instinct. Now, the title was just catching up. He formally joined Derby's coaching staff while still playing an unofficial assistant in boots, drawing lines on the training pitch while still dictating the rhythm of a Saturday midfield. This was rare. No big send-off, no farewell tour. He just transformed from general to architect. In 1973, he left Derby. Signed with Shrewsbury, playing 1973 to 1978, manager from February 1974. But by then, he had already been managing the side for over 2 years. He had rebuilt them from bottom fighters to respectable contenders. Winning promotion from the 4th Division in 1974 to 75 and the Welsh Cup in 1977. No flash, just function. And a growing reputation. Durban doesn't waste words. He just wins quietly. When Durban took the Stoke job in 1978, they were broken spiritually, tactically, financially. But that's when he thrived most. Not in comfort, but in challenge. He didn't arrive with slogans, he arrived with standards, no hype, just a clipboard and a stare that said, "We're going up." In his very first full season, he did what many said was impossible promotion to the First Division in 1979. He rebuilt Stoke's spine using a mix of experienced players and youth, forging an identity based on discipline and resilience. Gave youth a voice, but discipline a home. Every week, he instilled identity, not flamboyant football, but efficient, hard-to-beat resilience. Stoke stayed up in the top flight. Not just survived, they belonged. Durban made them tough to beat, horrible to break down, and always one goal away from shocking a giant. Between 1978 and 1981, he crafted a side that mirrored him, sharp-minded, hard-edged, understated, but undeniable. Alan Durban arrived at Sunderland in 1981, but from day one, it felt like he'd walked into someone else's war. The club had ambition, but no alignment. Money was tight, morale was worse. And Durban? He was never one for sweet talk. He built order, not hype. But Sunderland didn't want discipline, they wanted distraction. They didn't want structure, they wanted stars. In 1981 to 82, Durban scraped, reshaped, held the seams together with sheer will. He made them hard to beat. Ugly? Maybe. But effective enough to avoid relegation. And that's when the infamous quote landed a press criticism about his defensive football. His reply? "If you want entertainment, go and watch a bunch of clowns." It wasn't tactless, it was Durban. Raw, honest, focused, but the board didn't see the value, the fans didn't feel the charm. And in March 1984, he was dismissed. No scandal, no drama. Because Sunderland didn't need a general, they wanted a magician. But what they lost was a manager who could have made them men. He had a short managerial spell at Willington in 1984. Alan Durban's final managerial act took him back to where it began, Cardiff City, 1984. But it wasn't a homecoming, it was a storm. The club was in turmoil, low on funds, high on problems. He was expected to conjure miracles, without tools, without time. He managed from September 1984 to April 1986, but the club suffered consecutive relegations to the 4th Division. Durban's philosophy, structure, control, resilience couldn't take root in the chaos. The foundations were broken, and even he couldn't will them whole. He stepped away. No press tour, no farewell. And that was Alan Durban's way, never chasing applause, only chasing discipline. He later worked in scouting and mentoring roles, including serving as chief scout at Sunderland, a brief caretaker spell at Stoke City in 1998, part-time regional scout for Norwich City in 2010, and as a mentor at Stoke City's academy from 2011. He retired at the age of 75. As of August 2025, Alan Durban is 84 years old, out of the spotlight, but never out of football's fabric. Because his name, though seldom shouted, is stitched into the history of clubs he helped rebuild and teams he made tough. He may not have lifted the biggest trophies, but he hardened the men who did. They won't make statues for Alan Durban. He didn't ask for any. As a player, he was the brain in midfield. As a manager, he was the man who taught structure to chaos. He wasn't Bill Shankly, wasn't Brian Clough, but he stood beside them, challenged them, and in some ways, outlasted them. Because while others burned hot and fast, Durban stayed the course. He gave Stoke its last great breath, saved Sunderland when they were slipping, and dared to bring discipline to clubs on the brink. Ask his players and you'll hear respect, not romance. Alan Brazil called him a hard man, but fair. Others remembered the drills, the rules, the cold authority in his stare, and how later they understood it was all love. Not the soft kind, the kind that builds men. Today, his name doesn't echo in modern halls, but every tough, tactical, no-nonsense side owes a little something to Alan Durban. Because in the game of noise, he proved that quiet power lasts longest. If you respect the forgotten generals of football, subscribe now because Alan Durban deserves to be remembered.